Hello everyone, my name is Ramil Asawi, and over the next few minutes I'll be giving you a walkthrough of the Red Hat Developer Hub. Let's dive in. You're probably familiar with the concept of the inner and outer loops of the software development lifecycle, where the inner loop is a fast-paced process of coding, building, and testing the code, rinse and repeat until the code is ready and is then pushed to a Git repository, and then the process is handed over to the outer loop, and in the outer loop, activities shift from your local environment to the DevOps platform. The outer loop activities involve building the complete code branch on the DevOps platform, followed by a series of comprehensive tests, including security and compliance checks. Once these steps are successfully completed, the code is deployed to production. Now let's look at this process from the perspective of a new developer. Let's call him Kevin. Kevin is eager to get his hands dirty and start coding, but he struggles to find the proper documentation. And questions start piling up. So who owns the components he needs? What is the right branch of code that he should be looking at? And you get the idea. So when Kevin decides to provision an environment for testing, he is required to submit a ticket to the operations team and needs to wait a week or so until his environment is up and ready. Wouldn't it be great if all Kevin needed to do was click a button, a form pops up, he fills and submits that form, then in a self-service manner, his workspace is automatically provisioned with the right code branch along with the documentation, his application is deployed to OpenShift, fully integrated with the CI/CD pipeline. And the entire process is governed by his organization's security and compliance processes. Well, this is exactly what the onboarding process looks like with Red Hat Developer Hub. The Red Hat Developer Hub is an internal developer portal that exposes all your developer tools in a single pane of glass. It is integrated with industry standards and technologies through a broad ecosystem of community plugins, and it is extensible through its plugin system, so you can add or create your own plugins to integrate with the tools of your choice. It offers Golden Path, enabling developers to quickly spin up an application, and this path provides an abstraction layer, freeing developers from delving into the underlying technologies, and at the same time, the path has the guardrails to ensure adherence to security and compliance standards established by a platform engineer. Now let's take a look at a Golden Path in action. So in this demo, Kevin wants to start working on his Quarkus application. Red Hat Developer Hub will authenticate him using the Keycloak plugin. Then Kevin will choose the Golden Path template for his component. Red Hat Developer Hub will kick things off by creating a code repo for the app and a separate configuration repo for the GitOps operations. Then it will set up Argo CD and Tacton. We'll start by logging into Red Hat Developer Hub, and in this demo we have configured Keycloak to use GitLab as our identity provider. And what you see here is the homepage for the Red Hat Developer Hub. As you can see, there are heaps of links that are available for quick access, starting with links for our community project, the Janus Midstream project, links to developer tools, CI/CD tools, OpenShift clusters, monitoring and security tools. But what I want to start with showing you is what a Golden Path template actually looks like. So I'm accessing the source code for the Janus project. I'm going to have a look at the existing software templates. And let's look at a Quarkus web template. A software template, as you can see here, is defined as a YAML file that specifies the parameters and the steps we want to execute as part of our Golden Path. And this will look very familiar if you have ever tinkered with a Kubernetes YAML file before, in terms of having a similar structure where you specify an API version, a kind, metadata, and specs. But what is most important is the parameters. So parameters is where we let the templating engine know what variables we are going to provide. And then the next important thing is the steps. And steps tell the engine the flow of execution. So each step leverages built-in actions. And if you've used Ansible playbooks before, actions are very similar to modules. So actions do all the heavy lifting on our behalf. They know how to create a workspace. They know how to trigger a CI/CD pipeline and so on. So let's have a look at how a golden pass is actually executed. So I'm going to create a new golden pass. I'm going to choose one of those templates, the Quarkus service with Argo CD and a Tecton pipeline. And I'm going to be presented with a form that acts like a wizard to guide me through the application creation process. This form is rendered based on how we configured the parameters and the template YAML file that I showed you. So here I'm going to keep the default values except for the image registry. So I'm going to choose Quay as my image registry. And then we can review the summary quickly before we click Create. So what's happening in the background is that the Red Hat Developer Hub is using all the information we provided to generate our Quarkus component and then register it with the catalog. So now if I click on the Open Component in Catalog link, I'm redirected to my dashboard, and here I have access to all my developer tools. So for example, I can create my workspace in Red Hat DevSpaces. I'm going to create one based on VS Code, but I could have also chosen IntelliJ as my IDE. All right, while it provisions our workspace, let's take a look at the other tools at our disposal. So let's start by looking at how the Red Hat Developer Hub models our application. In the dependencies view, we have a visual representation of the application relationships and dependencies. So here we can see that my application provides an API. And if we have dependencies, for example, a dependency on an external database or an S3 bucket, we would have seen this in the view here. And here we have the catalog of our APIs. So this is the API that is exposed by my application. And I could also view my application documentation directly from here. And honestly, I do not like the level of details provided here, so maybe I will raise an issue directly from here to the application owner and let him know that I would like more details on the application. So here we have the topology view, which allows us to visualize the workloads running in our OpenShift project through one of the supported Backstage plugins. So it brings the OpenShift topology view experience to the Red Hat Developer Hub, and it looks like one of our pods is struggling to start up. Let's see if we can find out why. So let's look at the Kubernetes view, and this leverages another plugin to allow developers to view the cluster and service information. And let's see if I can dive deeper and find out what's wrong with our pod. So yeah, we can see here it is stating image pullback of error, indicating that the image does not exist. I could also get more details about my pod directly from here, have a look at its YAML file, for example. But now let's head out to our image registry. So this is leveraging the Quay plugin, and as expected, the image is not there yet. Which also explains the health status of our application on Argo CD, which state that it is degraded. So let's try and fix this issue now. And in this part of the demo, we will use the OpenShift DevSpaces to update our code, or even better, let's enrich our application documentation. And once we commit the change, a webhook will trigger the Tecton pipeline to build and push our container image to Red Hat Quay and deploy our application to our development environment. We will take this one step further, so we will then promote our application from the development environment to pre-prod and finally to production. So let's look at the workspace we created earlier, and let's open our Markdown file. And let's enrich this documentation. And let's submit our code. Once we commit and sync our changes, this will trigger our Tekton pipeline. So let's have a look. So this is yet another plugin working in the background to show us the progress of our pipelines running on OpenShift directly from our dashboard. And if we look at the OpenShift console, we will see our pipeline running as expected. And we also recognize that we have two pipelines, one to build our application and the other to promote our application, which we will use in a few minutes. Now that my build pipeline is completed, we can go ahead and check that the image exists in our image registry in Quay. And indeed, here is our image. And now we can have a look at our topology view. And we can see now that our application is up and running. I can access the route of my application directly from the dashboard. And if we look at our application status in Argo CD, we can see that now the dev environment is in a healthy status. So now we are ready to promote our application to pre-prod and then to production. So we are simulating those environments in OpenShift using different projects. So we can see we have our pre-prod environment and our pod is not ready yet. So let's tag our source in GitLab. So I'm going to create a new tag. Say that my code is now at version 1.0. And creating that tag will trigger my promote pipeline, which you can see is in progress right now. So now if I go back to my OpenShift console, my application is up and running in pre-prod environment. And my application is healthy and synced in Argo CD. So the last step now is to promote my application to the production environment. And for that, we are going to create a new release in GitLab. And once I create that new release, my promote pipeline will be triggered again in Tekton to promote my application from pre-prod to production. And once that is successful, we can have a look at our application in the prod environment. And see that our application is now in a healthy status. And our application status in Argo CD reflects the same. So we saw in the demo how Red Hat Developer Hub simplifies the onboarding process. We saw a golden path in action, and we saw a good number of our supported Backstage plugins in action. The real value here is that the process like onboarding that might take several days in some less nimble organizations can now be done in a few minutes. Everything is created consistently with security in mind, and the platform engineering team can be confident that developers and applications are onboarded following their guidance. And we also got to see how OpenShift and Red Hat tools like OpenShift DevSpaces, pipelines, and GitOps can support every step of the software developer lifecycle.